has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall, coast to coast. All right, Carver High, we talked about Houston being the new number one in college basketball, at least for this week.
At least for this week is right. It's been a revolving door, although for the last several weeks it's been really UConn and Purdue going back and forth. Now Houston slides in there. Purdue 2, UConn 3, Tennessee 4, Marquette 5. So that is your top 5. But as we always like to say, especially as we're this close to Selection Sunday, 3 weeks from yesterday, Scotty, I believe, March 17th, St. Paddy's Day, is when it will happen. The top 25 doesn't matter. All that matters is who gets there when the tournament starts 3 weeks from now. How about the best and the worst against the spread so far this year in college rack? You and Coach talked about this before. Minnesota actually didn't cover a game last night against Nebraska, but they still have the best ATS this year. 23-4 are the Gophers. Cal State Northridge, they've sent people to the window. The Seawolves of Stony Brook, Iowa State, South Carolina, and Nebraska, who's 18-10 against the number. The worst team, Pacific, out of the West Coast. Stephen F. Austin, no good. Mizzou, no good. Michigan, 8-20 against the number. No good when you don't get us to the window.
Well, Michigan covered yesterday against Purdue, and I'm not betting any money again on Northridge, Stony Brook, South Carolina. And I'll tell you what, Nebraska, they covered yesterday, and they continue to impress. And Minnesota didn't cover, but the fact that they're 23-4 against the spread is all you need to know, that usually they've been pretty point on.
They certainly have. Now the overs and the unders for you as we are about to turn the calendar to March. Wright State out of the horizon, 21 games to the over so far this year. Alabama with 20 games to the over. Kentucky 19. How about the over they had on Saturday, Scotty? What was that, 117-95 between Bama and Kentucky? Arkansas, Illinois, Purdue under. Marshall 20-8. Vandy and Vermont with 19 games to the under.
Yeah, look, I think Alabama's a really dangerous basketball team. I know they got whacked at Rupp, but a lot of teams stumble at Rupp. And then this year we've seen Kentucky stumble at home at Rupp. So I thought Kentucky just had a great day. I think Alabama will go further than Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. I don't think Arkansas has been a good team at all this year, so I don't care how many times they went over. They never win. And I think Illinois and Purdue are both very dangerous teams in the NCAA tournament. They'll both be high seeds. And all of those under teams, I think, like I said, Stackhouse, I think, is getting fired at Vandy. Vermont's actually a good team. And how about Notre Dame? They were down 30 at the Carrier Dome on Saturday, whatever it was, and they came back and they lost by like 3. I mean, how about Cuse blowing a 30-point lead against crappy Notre Dame? And let me tell you something, Rutgers is awful too. They got rolled by Maryland at the rack yesterday. They're awful, and they're not going to the tournament. But next year, they get 2 of the top 4 players in college basketball coming there, the high school superstars, Dylan Harper, and the other kid that's going with him. They're going to be badass. Pikel's going to have a great team next year. They're not worried about this year. They know this year's out the door.
No doubt about that. UConn's still the favorite right now.
Bailey's the other kid.
Yes, there he is. UConn 5-1, Purdue and Houston 7-1. Houston plus 750. Arizona 10-1. Then you have Tennessee, Iowa State, Marquette, Duke. Kansas now 20, Scotty, is where they're at on the big board.
I mean, that is unbelievable, those odds. You got to bet something on Bill Self in Kansas. That team is loaded. They're good. They can destroy anyone on any given day. So can North Carolina. Marquette's a fat number as well to bet on. I've just seen Arizona lose games that I doubt them. I'm sorry. I do believe in Houston, I think, more than most. Everybody already knows how good UConn is. Purdue always chokes, So does Tennessee. I'm not buying like Iowa State. They barely beat West Virginia. I mean, girls' high school teams can beat West Virginia, but they struggled with them at the Hilton Coliseum this weekend. That was embarrassing.
It certainly was. Jay Wright was asked about the Ohio State job, says it's a great job, but he is done coaching. I don't know. I kind of believe him. I know usually we don't believe these guys, and maybe one day he'll change his mind, Sky, but I actually feel like right now he likes his gig. Like, he's got so much money from Nova. He's doing TV. Right. He don't need it. Like, he doesn't need to go coach Ohio State or any of these other teams.
Let me tell you another thing. We talked about this on In-Game Live, Coach and I, that Ohio State is a football school. That is not a great job. I do not believe coaching basketball at Ohio State, your second fiddle, without a doubt. All that matters in Columbus is football. That's it. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes football is all that matters. You could be the greatest coach in the world, and you will never matter compared to Ohio State football. Like the talk of Dusty May. Now, we've heard that he's going everywhere. Ohio State, DePaul, all the rest. The bottom line is, I'm going to say it for the 5 millionth time. Mike Woodson needs to be fired in Bloomington, and they need to hire Dusty May tonight. Keep it under the table and announce it after FAU loses in the NCAA tournament, because Mike Woodson has lost the Indiana program. All they got to do is pay him $12 million to go away. They need to man up, pay him, get rid of him, and bring Dusty home. He was a guy that made his bones working for Bob Knight, and I am telling you, that guy can flat out coach. And Mike Woodson, when those kids are in a huddle with him, not one of them are listening to him. I mean, he has lost that team like no other. And that kid Ware looks like he wants to be anywhere but Bloomington, the 7-footer. They are awful.
I don't think John Wooden could win at DePaul, Scotty. If you put John Wooden at DePaul, I don't think he could win. That's how bad the situation is at that school. Caitlin Clark, triple-double, leads Iowa over Illinois, so she stays hot as Iowa now number 4 in the country on the women's side. We do have 3 games for you tonight in college rack of significance. Of course, we do have some mid-major games as well. We'll see if you're dipping your toe there. Let me start with Miami, and man, this team sucks, Scotty. Coach mentioned Larinaga before. They lost at home to Georgia Tech on Saturday.
Embarrassing.
And I know they went to the Final Four last year, so I'm sure you got a little bit of leeway there. You lost some guys off of that team. That was a real good team he had last year. But you can't lose at home to Georgia Tech. Now, tonight they're going on the road to North Carolina, and they're getting 2 tutties and a hook here, 14.5, 155.5 the total. Played them close at home 2 weeks ago, 3-point game.
Played them close at home 2 weeks ago. It's a big number, but here's the deal. I think they stink. They lost to Georgia Tech. I think there is some level of potential for Larinaga to walk away at 74 years old in Coral Gables when it's over. He reminds me of Larry Coker in a sense. When Larry Coker won a national championship, he was really old, and he walked away, and I wouldn't be surprised Larinaga calls it a day. There are a lot of guys. We talked about Leonard Hamilton. He's 75 years old. You just don't realize it. He's been coaching at Florida State and in college basketball since before Christ. He's 75 years old. I won't be surprised at all if Larinaga leaves Miami. I still think they get whacked tonight, and I think K-State will win tonight, and I like TCU tonight.
Though, because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers, and going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Just watched the final seconds of Illinois and Penn State, and by Dave's reaction, you think you know what happened there. How about that, Dave? How about that?
We're off the rundown. Sorry. Storm the court. You beat the 12th team in the country. That's fine. Second best in the Big Ten. That's fine. We are Penn State. Look at the crew jumping. This is so much fun.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, I told you, Mike, that I liked K-State tonight in Manhattan against West Virginia, and I also like TCU against Baylor in Fort Worth. I really like Jamie Dixon, the job that he's done with TCU. I know you're going to start with this K-State game, though. West Virginia, I couldn't believe they covered against Iowa State, but I think the game of the night is this Baylor-TCU game.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you the updated numbers for that. Kansas State is still 9.5. The total did tick up a point. It's 143.5 now for that game in the Little Apple in Manhattan. And TCU minus 2.5, 146.5 is the total, which, of course, as you said, game of the night there in Fort Worth for Jamie Dixon and the crew.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that game goes over, but I don't think the K-State game's going to go over. And I'm on K-State to win that game. And then, I'd be more, frankly, I'd be more inclined to bet the under than the 9.5. And then in the second game, I'd be more inclined to bet the 2.5. I did bet the 2.5 this morning. I laid 2.5 with TCU. And, look,
and there's
Baylor's
no
Baylor's good.
Oh,
this is not going to be easy.
Not easy at all. And no UNC Wilmington and Campbell tonight for you there in the CAA or any of these other games as usual on a Monday night. Just the 3 big ones. And then that is it there. All right, I have some baseball for you. You and Davis touched on a few things.
I did that one other one, Mike. I'm sorry. Two others. My bad. 2 others. I bet Bethune-Cookman laying 2.5 against Alabama State, and I bet Delaware to Hens laying 2 against Drexel in Delaware's gym. They're home. Both of those teams are home.
So we did get
Cookman and Delaware.
There you go. Baseball for you now. You and Davis touched on a couple things. I did want to give you this because the start of the Juan Soto era for the Yankees began this weekend. Of course, yesterday, spring training game, first game for him. How about a little Oppo Taco for Juan Soto on the Yes Network to get his Yankee season rolling?
Ground ball to second in the first, a walk, and a run scored in the third. That one is hit to deep left center field. That ball is gone off the scoreboard. A 3-run home run for Juan Soto, and the Yankees lead 7-1.
I think they scored 22 runs in the game, and then he hit another one today that hit off the wall and right. And, you know, he watched it go. He thought it was going out, and he stood and watched it going down the first base line. And then he finally started running. It could have been a triple. Both runs scored. He took the rest of the day off. This guy is a badass. I mean, we already knew it. We've seen him do it in D.C. We've seen him do it in San Diego. And now he's going to do it in that little sandbox in the Bronx. And right-handed, you know, a lefty power hitter with that short porch and right, like, God only knows how many he's going to hit. I think, you know, the talk of he's going to leave, I said this earlier, going to leave after 1 year is nonsense. When this guy sees what he can do with that batting from the left side, with his power, what he can do numbers-wise in the Bronx, what it equates to, Mike, and you notice, the more you put up, the more numbers you put up in the Bronx, there's nowhere else you're going to get paid more money than playing for the New York Yankees. You put up gigantic numbers in the Bronx for the pinstripers, you're going to get paid better than any team in baseball. I don't care who your agent is. I don't care about the Dodgers. I don't care about anything. You hit big-time numbers in the Bronx, no one will pay you more money than Hal Steinbrenner.
Yeah, they're off to a smoking start. I know it's only spring training. They scored the 22 runs on Saturday. They scored 12 runs yesterday. Then they tacked on 9 more today. So the Yankees have been scoring a lot of runs here to start things off.
That kid Jones looks good, too. How about him? 4
Spencer
hits.
Jones. Yeah, he hit a pretty good moonshot also.
5. I mean, the guy's a stud, and he can haul ass.
He can haul ass as well.
He's 6'5".
Yeah, huge dude with some wheels. Cody Bellinger back with the Cubs, 3-year, $80 million. Can opt out after the first and second year. Essentially, like Davis was saying, it's kind of like 3 one-year deals. If he gets hurt or something like that, he can opt in. And it's huge for the Cubs, Scotty. We kind of thought he'd go back there, but it's huge from this aspect. They've made a couple of other additions. I think they're worth maybe a ticket in that division. When you look at the NL Central, Brewers have obviously lost some things. Cardinals we finally saw fall off last year. But in terms of the odds to win the Central, I don't mind, Scotty, if you want to get yourself a little ticket on the Cubbies here. There they are at +200. The Cardinals are the favorite because they're the Cardinals, but I hope they suck like they did last year.
I don't believe in the Cubs just because they have Cody Bellinger. They've lost, Stroman, who was great for them. Their pitching is weakened immediately with his loss, and it's all about pitching. I don't care if they have 5 Bellingers playing on that team. Just because he signed a 3-year, $80 million deal does not mean the Cubs are going to win, let alone win that division. And people writing off the Brewers is a mistake. And I do believe the Cardinals they have to be better than they were last year. They just have to be. They're never bad, really, in consecutive years in my lifetime.
No, and a lot of people are pumping up the Reds as well, as you saw there at +275. I'll believe the Reds winning when I see it, as we always like to say.
The Reds suck, and Votto's gone, and let's stop with all the nonsense.
Yeah.
And the Pirates, they're going to stink as usual, and everybody thinks they're great. What they need to do is let that Skeens kid pitch, and then let all those young stars they got play, and let them turn into something. They got so many young, talented players, and then they play all these hack bum free agents like what's his name, Tellez. That guy's a fat ass. He's horrible.
Tellez, yes.
Whatever, he's awful. Stop.
Ohtani will make his Dodgers spring debut tomorrow as the designated hitter. Everybody can't wait to watch that. And Senga got the PRP injection in his right shoulder. Not going to throw for 3 weeks. I'm sure that's going to end well, good too, for the Mets. Senga all year. That'll be a problem.
Well, look, I'll say this. That shot works. I'll give you this much. When they give you the platelet-rich I mean, it works. So whatever problem he's got, I think right now will be gone. And I don't think that he's a power pitcher at all. He's a forkball pitcher. So I need him to take a platelet shot, make it work, which it will, and then go out and throw forkballs. I don't want this guy throwing heat and anything else. Throw that forkball. No one can hit it. You remember back in the day when, what was his name, the reliever, threw the split-fingered fastball every single pitch. Remember for the Cubs, your guy made it to the Hall of Fame, and all he did was throw a split-fingered fastball, and it bit it fell off like a noodle from the table. I am all for Senga just throwing forkballs, nothing else. Nobody can hit it. Why would you throw another pitch?
No doubt. Just keep throwing the same one over and over and over and over again. There you go, your baseball for today. NFL, you're obviously going to talk to Adam here in a couple minutes. It's the week so many have circled on the calendar as they all get together in Indianapolis. The scouting combine gets started. I already saw some of the coaches are starting to talk today. All the players will start to show up. But now, it's funny about this, and you and Gabe kind of mentioned this earlier about Harrison's not going to go, and these other guys are going to go and not throw. Like, if the big names aren't going to go, it's going to, people actually who do watch this, they're going to lose juice too, Scotty. There's only so long you can watch, the offensive linemen from Wisconsin run around. Nobody cares about them. They care about the quarterbacks and the skill position players.
It is the most overrated event in sports. I mean,
it's tough.
The flag football game at the Pro Bowl is better.
Though, because this team is hot garbage. Poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
The reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers, and going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Just watched the final seconds of Illinois and Penn State, and by Dave's reaction, you think you know what happened there. How about that, Dave? How about that?
We're off the rundown. Sorry. Storm the court. You beat the 12th team in the country. That's fine. Second best in the Big Ten. That's fine. We are Penn State. Look at the crew jumping. This is so much fun.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Adam Kaplan is our NFL insider, and he's gearing up for another trip to Indianapolis for the Combine this week. And the tag deadline is the 5th at, I believe, 4 p.m. Eastern. And today, we've already seen a major tag in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and Scott, you and I talked about this last week, that it most likely would happen. And what I explained was, and we'll develop this a little bit more now, at some point over the next 2 years, the Bengals are going to extend the contract of Jamar Chase. They can. He's actually eligible to have an extension. And that deal, when it gets done, will be a minimum of $30 million per season. That is what Tyreek Hill is making. I know Hill is going to be a Hall of Famer someday, but that's where the numbers are going, at the $30 million a year mark for wide receiver, and Jamar Chase is an absolute superstar. It's hard to pay two receivers market money. You could pay one, but it's hard to pay two. So you mentioned T. Higgins. He got franchise tagged today. There are two tags. We'll get into that in a second as well. The franchise tag is just valued just a bit under $22 million, $21.82 million per season. It's a one-year deal, by the way. It's fully guaranteed when he signs it. And he'll sign that, obviously. He'll play the season. He could wait. Doesn't really matter. By the way, if he doesn't show up to off-season workouts, they cannot fine him because he does not have a signed contract. So he could wait till training camp if he wants to. He could wait till the end of the preseason. But bottom line is he's going to be a Bengal this season, but they're going to have to get Jamar Chase's deal done over the next couple of years. And that's why, again, it's hard to pay. Think about it. If Chase gets $30+ million a year, and let's say they want to extend Higgins $20 to $22 million a year, you can't be paying two receivers a season $50 to $52 million. That's just not going to happen. No one's ever done it, and it's not going to happen. And that's the thing that you worry about long term if you're the Bengals. And then, by the way, they're a small market team. They've not done that before. So they're going to have to make a decision after the season. But Higgins will be a Bengal this year.
Well, how much is he going to get? Is he getting $21.8 million, or is he getting $19.7 million?
No, yeah. So let me explain that. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, he gets the franchise tag. So the two tags. There's the transition tag. It is rarely used, and here's the reason why. Yes, you save a little bit under the cap. The transition tag is $19.77 million. You can only use one tag, either transition or the franchise. Now, with transition, the problem is, let's say with a franchise tag, let's say someone shocked the world and signed T. Higgins to an offer sheet. If the Bengals didn't match that offer, the contract offer, they would get 2 first-round picks back. No one's going to do that for a number 2 receiver, so that's not going to happen. Now, here's the problem with the transition tag and why teams rarely use it. You have the opportunity to match. You have right of first refusal, but you get nothing back if you don't match. That is why teams don't use the transition tag, because they're not going to get those 2 picks back. And all they would do is be able to match it. If they don't, they lose the player and they get nothing back. That's why teams don't do it. The transition tag is rarely used.
Well, it's painfully obvious to anyone that knows anything about football that T. Higgins is worth $21 million a year. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think he's got any room to complain about it either. Like, when Barkley got the tag at 10 and then they gave him 11, everybody was like, oh, he's worth way more than that. Now he's at a point where they probably aren't going to keep him at all. But if there's a guy, to me, that's worth, when you're talking about giving Chase $30 million, which is what's going to happen, then I have no problem with the realm of 21 for T. Higgins. He's worth every penny. He's a badass.
Yeah, him and Ayuk are the best number 2 receivers in the National Football League. But again, it's what you have to pay. You're paying Burrow $55 million a year. You can't pay everybody. That's the problem. There's a salary cap. If there's no salary cap, you pay him whatever you want to pay him. And then it's also the cash allocation. The Bengals are not one of the richest teams in the National Football League. And that's the other thing they have to look at. But at least they keep, with Joe Burrow, they've got the two receivers, but they absolutely need a tight end. That will complete their offense. Joe Mixon, by the way, is under contract. But the bottom line is they have to get a tight end, and that they could do probably in the draft. It's not a great draft for tight end, but there are some good players. We'll talk about that closer to the draft once we get through free agency. But the Bengals are keeping Higgins. That is the big story of the day, and you're absolutely right with Barkley. The question is about tagging him. There's zero chance of tagging him. It's with Barkley, can they find a middle ground contract? And I'm telling you, these running backs are, if you thought last year that they took it on the chin, wait till you see some of these running back contracts once we get to free agency. The days of getting double-digit millions per year, a lot of them are not going to get it, and that's just the bottom line with free agency right now at that position.
The Giants aren't going to give him any more money. He's leaving the Giants, I think. And then let me just say this about Higgins lastly. They're going to get one more good year out of Higgins, which is beneficial to the franchise. And then the wear and tear that he's going to get in that year and the beating on his body, making all the catches that he makes up, and he climbs up and pulls it out of the sky. And then every time he does that, he gets lit up. His body is going to be cut down. And then next year, he's not going to be worth that money again. This is I think it's his last shot to make that kind of money, to be honest with you. I think his value will go down based on wear and tear and years and age. I think this is the most money he'll ever make.
Yeah, and by the way, remember, he had 2 separate hamstring injuries last season. And Trent Irwin, who was one of their top backup receivers, is up. Tyler Boyd, their slot receiver, is up. He's one of the best slots in the National Football League. Yeah, they've got some contracts to get through here, and they've got to draft a young running back. But Joe Mixon has certainly done a good job there. And look, the Bengals are one of those teams. Now, last year they had a lot of injuries. You know about Burrow's injury, and by the way, Jake Browning. How about Jake Browning come out of nowhere? They got to look at his contract. They've got a lot of contracts to get through here, and this is what happens when you become a good team and you draft well. That's the underrated part of this turnaround under Zach Taylor in their front office, is how well they've drafted. Chase is a stud. Higgins, who we just talked about. Burrow, of course. They've rebuilt their offensive line with some veterans, and they've kind of mixed and matched on defense. But this is a good football team that would certainly challenge in the AFC North.
So the combine started today. Guys started showing up. What are teams looking for this week from the players? We talked earlier on this show about Harrison's not going. We talked about Williams not and Daniels not going to throw. And we talked about, is it, bad that they don't throw? And then we talked about, is it worth it to blow off going at all like Harrison is? What are teams looking for at these combines every year, in essence?
Yeah, exactly. So here's the number one thing is medical testing. Working out is fine, but they also have a pro day and private workout. So that's minor compared to medical testing. So let's say a player had a surgery in the fall. They want updated medical testing. The medical testing, by the way, the players have to get there as early as 4:35 a.m. And they got to be there, and they got to wait till it's their turn, and they go through all sorts of testing. And if they had a surgery, they might need an MRI or whatever kind of testing is needed. And then they have what's called the combine recheck. Let's say the guy had an ACL injury, right? He had the surgery in the fall. They got an update here. They have another MRI. And then they'll have for the combine recheck in April. They want to see even additional before the draft. And of course, by the way, when a player visits a team, they could actually have updated medical testing. You can't work them out there, but you could have testing. So that's very important. The medical testing is probably number one. Number two, getting those meetings are only 15 minutes, but getting in front of a player. Yes, I know these players are coached. The agents will hire coaches to work with them. But the bottom line is getting in front of these players is really paramount, because if you're spending a first or second round pick on a guy you believe is going to start, and if you're doing that, you certainly think they're going to start, you want to feel comfortable with these players. And yes, some of these players met with these teams at the combine, but here, the head coach, the general manager, and by the way, these interviews are taped. The teams, film teams, they come in and they film these interviews. So those are really important. And then, of course, the timing and the workouts. Now, what you want, though, this is important. Yes, a 40 time is sometimes overrated, but for receivers or skill position players or corners or safeties, you want to get updated 40 times, because sometimes these guys have not run or been timed officially for 2 or 3 years. You want to get that updated time. Now, you mentioned players not working out in Indy, right? Marvin Harrison Jr., it doesn't matter. He's not going to go past number 4 because he's basically the best player for this draft. He won't go at number 1 because it's going to be a quarterback. He is by far the best player for this draft. He's special like his father. He's an incredible football player, high character guy. He doesn't need any of this stuff. But the bottom line is medical testing, meetings also, and getting in front of these players. But the medical testing is number 1 because here's another thing that happens, and I hate to bring this up, but it happens. Every couple of years, a player will show up for medical testing, something you didn't know about, and every once in a while, the guy will actually be taken off boards because medical staff won't pass the player. Could be a knee injury, could be a kidney problem, could be something very serious. But at least that they find it, Scott. But the bottom line is it's very important, this medical testing. And again, medical grades are also given out here by clubs. They're updated once we get through this week.
It was word for word what you just said of what I said earlier in the show with Morency about Marvin Harrison. I mean, literally word for word. I said he doesn't need to go because he's the best player in the draft. That kid doesn't need to go do anything. He's going to go so fast in that draft, make your head spin.
Yeah, and by the way, you could have them in for a pre-draft visit. Each team has 30. You could do that. Teams don't need to work them out privately. There's no reason to do that because the tape stands for itself. This guy is we talked to Rick Spielman last week, the former Vikings GM. Rick said he's once in a 5 to 10 year player, and he's that special. This guy's the best player for the draft. You and I totally agree on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we'll see. Hey, have a great trip to Indy. I'm sure we'll talk later in the week about everything that's going on in Indianapolis at the Combine with all the meetings and the medical and everything and the testing and the valuations and the chance to sit with the teams. It's all very exciting. Thank you, Adam. Have a safe trip.
Yes, sir.
Though, because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
We just watched the final seconds of Illinois and Penn State, and by Dave's reaction, you think you know what happened there. How about that, Dave? How about that?
We're off the rundown. Sorry. Storm the court. You beat the 12th team in the country. That's fine. Second best in the Big Ten. That's fine. We are Penn State. Look at the crew jumping. This is so much fun.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I got to tell you about this BetMGM app. It's so phenomenal. Everybody's doing it. They just won't admit it. You got to sign up for the BetMGM app. Get it on iOS or Android or BetMGM.com. Sign up, put $5 in, open an account. You're good to go. Use the bonus code SG150, SG150. Boom. You're getting 150 in bonus bets when you make a $5 standard odds wager on anything. You bet $5 on an NBA game, win or lose. Boom. 150 right in your account, and then boom, you're off and running. And then you got 150 to play with. And then the challenge is to see if you can make that puppy grow like a tree, like a weed. You're going to love the BetMGM app. It's one of the greatest apps in the world. The other app that everybody's talking about is the SportsGrid app. It is so popular because it's free. And I don't have to do anything. I can follow my favorite hosts like Carver High. You can watch the network. You can listen to the network. You get everything, stories, odds, highlights. Everything is on this app. And like I said, it's free. I told the story on In-Game Live. The other day I was turning on Granny's app because it wasn't working on her phone. And I did it at a five-star restaurant on her birthday, her 90th birthday the other night. And when I did it, I had to come over and show her how it works and hit the live button, hit the red watch button. And as I was doing it, I had my giant ass in some lady's face that was close to our table. The tables were real close together. And I enjoyed it because I was the entire time I was showing Granny the app, I had my ass in this lady's face and she had to put up with it. And then I turned around when I was done showing her and I went, "Pardon me." I gave her a pardon me instead of excuse me. I said, "Pardon me, madam, for my ass is in your face while you're enjoying your bottle of Pinot Noir and your $1,000 dinner. Corn dog." Anyway, get the SportsGrid app. It's fantastic. I show it to everyone. I show it to waiters, busboys, bus drivers, golfers, drug addicts, homeless people. I show it to everyone. I promote SportsGrid like no other. I do it all day long. Carver High's seen me. Mavia's seen me. Coffee Kofsky's seen me in the streets doing it. Homeless people in Vegas. I'm turning people onto the app. It's unbelievable. And it's neck and neck for me. The BetMGM app and the SportsGrid, it's like a race. It's like a 3 wide. It's like 3 wide at Atlanta Speedway the other day.
I was even showing people online at the indoor water park last week. I was giving them the SportsGrid app. At the Wolf Lodge. I was giving everybody, they were all getting the SportsGrid app right there online. It was outstanding. Okay, here we go. A couple things to clean up, and then I got to get to the hockey for tonight. So we all know this now. Williams and Daniels aren't going to throw, but they'll be there to talk. Good for them. Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and J.J. McCarthy, they're all going to throw in Indianapolis. So set your DVR, Scotty, to watch all the quarterbacks throw later this week. Yes.
I got to tell you, Michael Penix really needs to do a lot of work showing everyone that cannon of his, lefty cannon of his. He needs to show more NFL teams that he can actually throw a football. Have we not seen this guy just absolutely ripping passes all over the football field for the last couple of years? Have we not seen enough that he has to throw at that thing? It's ridiculous. This guy's arm is an absolute fire thrower.
Makes no sense. You know what the combine helps? It helps the players that nobody watched. The players that didn't play at big-time colleges. That's who it helps. It doesn't help these guys. We've watched all these guys play. If you haven't figured out by now, if Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels and Drake May can't play or not. That's just, you're not going to figure it out by them throwing with shorts inside in Indianapolis.
Do you think that
with no defenders in their face.
think that natty title McCarthy is going to be a good NFL quarterback?
No. In fact, I'm stunned that people want to draft him as high. People say he's going to get drafted in the top 15 or 10 or I wouldn't even draft him in the first round, to be quite honest with you. But it sounds like that's something that's going to happen. Here's what we do know, and this is history tells you this. Let's say all 6 of these guys go in the first 30 or 35 picks.
Right.
Odds are only 2 of them are going to be really good. Maybe one will be decent, and the other 3 will be hacks. That's just the way the draft works. Go look at the history of the 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks that get taken in the first round.
You're right. I'm not going to argue with that.
They ain't all 83 with Kelly Elway, Marino, and Geno. They ain't all that draft. Go look. Most of the time, they suck. Half of them. So that's just how it always works out.
Look how many great college quarterbacks. They were great in college, and they were complete ass in the NFL. I mean, it is like 80% of them.
Look, I mean, the last time you had this many that were going to go this high, 2 of them obviously really good, and Lamar went last of them. He went 30th. Allen and Lamar, really good. Baker, serviceable. He's done a decent job of being the number 1 overall pick.
He's moved around like luggage.
Darnold's a backup, and Rosen's out of the league. That's 5 guys.
Rosen
2
was
were really
awful,
good.
and so is Darnold.
But that's the last time you had 5 or 6 guys go in the first round quarterback wise.
Right.
They aren't all gonna hit. Somebody's gonna suck. And you got to make sure you get the right one. That's the whole part of the game. The Bengals give Higgins the franchise tag. You talked about that, 21.8. Now the running back, Scotty, last year a bunch got tagged. This year that's not going to happen apparently. The Giants want to talk to Barkley about a new deal, but they don't plan on tagging him. The Cowboys aren't going to tag Tony Pollard. The Raiders aren't going to tag Josh Jacobs. And why, Scotty? Because none of them want to pay those guys $12.8 million this year. That's why none of them are going to get tagged.
And I'll tell you another thing. I'm going to say it again. I think the Giants are done with Barkley. I think he's moving on.
I do too. I agree. He's not going to be a Giant next year. Andy Reid expected to become the highest paid coach in the NFL. I guess, going to the Super Bowl every year can get you that, right? Here's when you go, and Belichick leaving.
He deserves
I guess those
it.
are the reasons. Yeah, no doubt. He's been outstanding. And final NFL note for you, because we always love Peter King, announced this morning retiring, Scotty, after 40 years of covering the NFL. Peter King sailing off into the sunset of his daily NFL coverage. What a shame.
Yeah, I love Peter, and 40 years is a long time doing anything. I've been doing this 40 years, and I know there's a lot of people around here that want to get rid of me.
I'm sure we'll still see Pete now and then. Let's get the hockey, because I got to get these highlights in. They're too good from yesterday. There was a lot of crazy games in the NHL. We have 4 games tonight. How about the Penguins and Flyers? This was like an old school Penguin-Flyer game yesterday afternoon, Scotty, on Hockey Day in America. How about a 5-point game for Sidney Crosby? Scored early in the game, racked up a ton of assists, including this one to Raquel to make it 6-4 in the third on TNT.
Now Crosby, 3 points today. Out to Pettersson, left point. Crosby with it once again, leaned on by Stahl. Shot! Stahl! Raquel! 6-4 Penguins. It is his first in the last 16 games.
A couple things. One, they're still 8 points out of the last wild card. They stink. And they're not making up 8 points even if God takes all the other teams to heaven. Okay? And then secondly, all these morons that keep doing stories of where Sidney Crosby's going to play next year and moving forward and to finish his career. That guy's not leaving Pittsburgh. He's going to do a Lemieux, and he's going to, not only will he play the rest of his career with the Penguins, he'll be running the Penguins one day. Guaranteed. He'll be running the Penguins. Guaranteed. And all this, these websites where 5 landing spots for Sidney Crosby. 75 trade scenarios for Sidney Crosby. I mean, where do these stupid jackasses come up with this stuff? They got some guy sitting around. That's all he does all day. Tony Pollard landing spots. Russell Wilson, top 5 landing spots. I mean, I want to stick a knife in my eyeball when I read this stuff. Here's me on the phone just spinning through the Shaq piles of Shaq. Just nonsense. Shaq all day. That was a little Gambling Kenny. Did you see it? I had it all.
I saw that. You gave the.
I had like a
give the flip right back over. Rangers' 10-game winning streak was snapped at the worst team in the Eastern Conference. They lost to Columbus 4-2. All good things must come to an end. The Red Wings beat the Blackhawks in overtime in Chicago. But let's talk about it. First of all, they put Chelios as number 7 up in the rafters.
Yeah.
Very well deserved. And you also had the return of Patty Kane to Chicago for the first time in another uniform. And let's just say, Scotty, he made his presence felt in overtime on Bally Sports Detroit.
Nice. It's Patrick Kane in Chicago. Oh my God! Kane with the overtime winner. The Red Wings win it 3-2. The story is complete on Kane's return to Chicago.
I thought
you are Showtime for sure.
Yeah, he said it was showtime. Kane did on the ice. Patrick Kane's a badass, and he's one of the coolest dudes I ever met. And he also is one of the greatest players ever. And the fact that he got a 10-minute standing ovation was deserved, an incredible moment. And then he has the overtime winner on a snapper upstairs. He just absolutely tore that goalie's onions right off of his body. They call him Shelly now, too. After he was Frank when the game started, now he's Shelly, too, after his onions got torn right off his, right on, and they just shoveled him right off the ice. And I was going to say something awful right there, and I didn't. And that just is a great skill that I've developed.
It certainly is. Later in the week, we'll talk about the Cup odds because the Panthers, now the favorites, along with the Oilers for the Cup. So both of those teams passed Colorado. I'll do more with you on that later in the week. Let's get to tonight quickly. Only 4 games. There they are, the odds for you.
I don't buy that for 1 minute that they're going on another run to win the Stanley Cup. That is not happening.
I do not disagree with you at all there. Ottawa is in Washington tonight against the Caps. Ottawa's the road favorite here, minus 140 now. 6.5 is the total in D.C.
I bet on them. I bet Ottawa tonight. I got them at minus 115 on BetMGM this morning. And I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun on the app making that bet. I just love betting on BetMGM. And then I make all these winners. I'm just constantly I'm just like this in the morning, like it's like I got a twitch.
Let me give you the other 3, then you tell me who you like. The Islanders, who just absolutely suck. They're in Dallas against the Stars. Stars minus 165, 6.5 here. The Kings are in Edmonton tonight against the Oilers. Oilers minus 155, 6.5. And the Bruins still out west on that long trip. They're in Seattle. They're minus 145 on the road against the Kraken.
Yeah, I think the Bruins beat the Kraken. I think Edmonton gets right in that game against L.A. And I bet the Islanders game under 6 at plus 102 with the Stars in Dallas. I'm worried because a lot of people had it at 6.5, and it was like minus $1.30, minus $1.40. I got it at plus 102 under 6. So I'm hoping that the Islanders show up and give Dallas a game. I highly doubt it. You said it best. They're awful.
They suck. They are awful. Jake Knapp. Who?
Take an afternoon nap?
An afternoon nap at the Mexico Open. His first career PGA Tour win. And they're in Horo's backyard this week. Used to be the Honda, now the Cognizant at PGA National. Horo, I need your guest room this weekend.
Love that court. Love that court.
Nets, though, because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jock in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
We just watched the final seconds of Illinois and Penn State, and by Dave's reaction, you think you know what happened there. How about that, Dave? How about that?
We're off the rundown. Sorry. Storm the court. You beat the 12th team in the country. That's fine. Second best in the Big Ten. That's fine. We are Penn State. Look at the crew jumping. This is so much fun.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, Ferrall finish time. Eric Bieniemy joins UCLA as an offensive coordinator and associate head coach of another job that he won't get the head coaching job of after he's been mentioned to be a head coach for the last 10 years every year and never gets any of them. Canelo Alvarez parts ways with the PBC and Al Heyman. Looks like he's going back to DAZN, which no one watches. Richard Sherman was arrested for DUI over the weekend. Always a good story when we see people getting popped for being drunk that are famous. We live for that on this show. Cam Newton gets jumped by 3 guys at a youth tournament on a viral video. The best part of it was watching Cam Newton beat the crap out of all 3 of them. Diarrhea, including stomach bug, spreads through the Northeast and is incredibly contagious. We're hoping that we all get it at the network like we got everything else. I'm just kidding. It was my fault. I gave everyone the Hanta. I should have never showed up with that cough and sneeze at the big event. California library shuts down due to drug use and public sex inside the library. Carver High and I have always dreamed of tagging chicks back by the encyclopedia section at the local library. New York City teacher brags about swinging parents at a cool elementary school. Nothing like having all your neighbors sleep with each other when they have the car key swapping event. Dad and girlfriend arrested after their kids were found encased in concrete in a suitcase. That's like John Wayne Gacy stuff, man. I need a movie on that one where they found the kids encased in concrete in a suitcase. I love it. Waffle House shooting in Indy leaves 1 dead and 5 injured. I'm a big fan of Waffle Houses in general, especially when there's murders at them. It always makes it more interesting when you're having a waffle. California canine found pounds of meth hidden in dog treat boxes during a traffic stop. Dogs love treats. Never hide the meth and cocaine in a dog treat box when there's a canine around sniffing for treats. GTD is next. Go to FerrallOnTheBench.com for everything. That includes making lots of money. That's what we do. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 on Coast to Coast.